Well, hello, everyone. I know participants are joining, and it's right at 3 o'clock. I'm Dr. Kelly Hedgepath, and I'm joined by Dr. Lee Lewis and our medical assistant, Sydney Solom, and we want to welcome everyone back to our Wednesday webinar. So thank you all for joining. And this week, we are thrilled to be joined by Dr. Karen Jacobs, who is a clinical professor of occupational therapy at Boston University and an associate dean of digital learning. So two things that I think are going to be very useful to all of us today in her discussion on ergonomics and how to live a healthy lifestyle. So as always, we will try to save room for conversation at the end. And I think Dr. Jacobs is going to work to make this an interactive lecture. So we encourage you to type your questions into the Q&A, and we will save time to review those at the end. And I think Dr. Jacobs has also provided us with some handouts that it might be nice if you have as a reference and maybe that you follow along with. So Sydney is going to put those in the chat, and hopefully you'll be able to view those as she gets started. So thank you, Dr. Jacobs, and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. I thought how I would start off this webinar first to introduce that I'm an occupational therapist and to just give you a little bit of background of what is occupational therapy. A lot of people call it OT, and we work with people of all ages. We focus on whatever is meaningful to the individual so that they can find practical solutions to living life to its fullest. And boy, isn't that important and something that resonates so much here in the Lown group. Well, I want to just orient you to what we'll be talking about today. We'll start with what is ergonomics, and I'll explain it in a, I think, practical way. We'll talk about working from home or living from home during COVID, studying from home, COVID challenges with living at home, the physical workspace, the cognitive load, the psychosocial factors, and we'll do some breaks and exercise. So get ready in, let me see what time, in about 25 minutes, because we will take a stretch, because we're talking about ergonomics. Taking a break is one of the most important things we do. I do want to acknowledge that today continues to be a stressful day, particularly since election. Our national election was yesterday, and we don't know the outcome yet for our president and some other people who are running for election. So what I'd like us to do is to take a couple of deep breaths, in with your breath in your nose and out with your mouth, and set an intention for yourself for this webinar. And let's put all of that stress away and have this as an interactive learning experience. I would love you to take time when I ask questions to type it into the chat box. I want you to be able to apply what you are learning today in your own home. Here we go. So ergonomics is, and I quote, the science of work, of the people who do it, and the ways it's done, the tools, the equipment that people use, the place where they work or live. As we know with COVID, we've been living and working in the same environment, and the psychosocial aspects of working and living situation. And so the person is the center of all of that. And everything needs to change around the person rather than the person changing because they're in their home or they're in a workplace. Here's my first question to you, and type it in the Q&A. Where have you seen the word ergonomics on a product? Okay, type it in and let's see what people put, because I want to tell you something about ergonomics in a moment. So take a minute and type it into the Q&A. Where have you seen the word ergonomics? Okay, someone wrote on my chair, backrest. Dina, thank you. How about someone else? Household goods, furniture, computer keyboards. Audrey? How about some others?
There's a lot in the chat too, Karen.
Oh, here we go. Let me go look in the chat. We're typing in 2 places. Oh, great. Sarah, thank you. A mouse pad. Mary, a pillow. On a chair. Great. So think about it even beyond those. You'll see it on boxes of baby diapers. You'll see it on golf clubs, tennis rackets, gardening tools. The interesting aspect of the word ergonomics is that there is no consumer protection for the word. Any company can put the word ergonomics on their product. And what does the consumer think if they see the word ergonomics? So type that in. If you see the word ergonomics on a product, what does it make you think? Does it make you think that someone has checked it and made sure that it's great? Thank you, Lynn, that you think it's safe for you. We don't know. Somebody else. Just safety? How about quality as well? So we have to be very careful when we look at a product that has the word ergonomics on it, because there's no one really out there protecting that word. We have societies that advance the science of ergonomics, but again, there's no good housekeeping seal of approval of someone watching the products to make sure that if ergonomics is put on them, that they are safe and designed for the user. So, does this look familiar to anybody? Type in yes. When we went to working remotely and living remotely, we all sort of changed what we were doing. And we used whatever was in our home. So in one of these, it's a piano stool. Another one is laying on their bed with a pillow. This is me in a dormitory at Boston University, where I typically live as a faculty in residence, lying in bed. And this one over here that my cursor is on, it's the bottom left for me if you're looking at the screen. This person is using her dog as a footrest and is working with the back of her couch as her support. We have used lots of things to make ourselves comfortable, to be able to apply and do all the things that are important. So let's look at some statistics that I think is really important. With COVID, about 42% of US and about 88% of people globally are working from home, or they're called telecommuting full-time. And we see that about 3.4 billion people in 84 countries have been confined to their homes. And these statistics are moving targets because we are seeing countries and towns opening and closing and opening and closing with COVID. But what about studying from home? In March 2020, more than 124,000 US schools closed, which impacted 55.1 million students. And currently, the pandemic continues to impact families' school choices. And we read in the paper all the time with schools opening again and closing. So we see full-time online learning or remote learning. We see full-time in school in some places around the country. We see remote and in school, and I'll give you an example of my grandchildren in 2 different communities. They go to school go physically to school on a Tuesday and Thursday, and then on a Wednesday and a Monday sometimes they have remote, and then it could reverse the days. So it makes it quite challenging for families when the children aren't in fact doing one thing, staying at home, or one thing going to school. And what happens if they're working from home too? Some people have chosen to do just homeschooling. And then an interesting construct is called learning pods, where families are coming together and either hiring or volunteering, where people in a neighborhood or, it could be family members are getting together and they're in these learning pods, and the kids are learning in that way. I want to do a shout out to this picture over here that you're seeing. It's been hard for families to take their homes and make them into schools. Sometimes there's limited resources, sometimes there's limited space, privacy, all of that. And I love this as a shout out. This is something that my niece did out in California. She has 3 sons. And what she did was she took cardboard that folds 3 ways, and each of her son has an individualized space where they work. A lot of the work that they're doing in school is, reminders are on that. They have their own space to use their computer, a headset. So that pivoting might require some, I think, creativity. And I love what she did here. So here's where I want to be interactive again with you. I'd like you to share where you are working from home. And if you're not working per se, such as, a job where you're having to report to an employer, maybe you're volunteering, or maybe you're interacting with family members, I'd like you to type in where you're spending most of your time using technology. So it could be your notebook computer, a desktop computer, a tablet, your phone, and any other device that you might be using. So let's see if we can type that in, okay? And put it into the Q&A if you can, where you are located most of the time, and how much time are you spending on technology? And let's have this be on a daily basis. So type it in, and I'll take a check, and we'll see what people are saying here. And it looks like some people might be putting it in the chat box, so I'll read that. Okay, so Lynn wrote, you work on a laptop and a tablet at a desk. So Lynn, type in how much time you spend in a day. Mary wrote, a phone, a laptop, on the bed, 2 hours a day. And Rachel wrote, my husband has occupied the dining room and I use the bedroom. Rachel, that's a really good example of how we're having to take whatever space we're in. And if there's another person living in our same space, we have to negotiate who gets to be in what space at what time. And so it's not uncommon to see people having to come up with schedules to say, okay, Rachel, to your husband, maybe I need the dining room today and you have to go into the bedroom. Lynn wrote 3 or 4 hours a day, and Carol wrote on the couch with either a laptop or a phone. So as we go along, I do want you to interact, share this with us, and we'll sort of unravel how we can apply ergonomic strategies to these areas. Oh, and someone else wrote laptop and 10 hours a day. So COVID-19 challenges. And I'd like you to type in which of these challenges you have faced. Some of them are a lack of transition between work, school, and personal life, a lack of accountability and motivation. I'm not going to ask you to stand up now, but how many people got dressed in the morning? A lot of times people will decide, I'm just going to put something that someone can see the top of me on my camera, and maybe I'll keep my pajama bottoms on, okay? So, you know, that lack of motivation to get dressed in the morning. No one cares, something like that. Lack of connection with others, and we'll talk about that. Lack of routines. You know, how many of you are sleeping later in the morning because you don't have to get out of bed, get dressed, and go outside to do something? Lack of control, disorganization, being distracted, and I know we're very distracted today. Feeling overwhelmed, and that could be something right now we're feeling too, and musculoskeletal discomfort we're finding. So let me see what a few people are writing here. Lynn wrote, definitely feeling more isolated, miss friends and social contact. And Carol wrote, a lack of routines. We'll talk about this, and again, share all of this as we go along. So when we're looking at ergonomics, we can chunk it out into different areas. And I thought for this webinar, I would chunk it out, spending most of my time on the physical aspect so that you could work on making any changes to your physical workspace or living space. Then we've got the cognitive load. That's how we're processing information. And then the psychosocial factor. So I'm going to spend time on the physical. I'm going to spend more time or additional time on cognitive load and in particular time management. And then I'm going to spend time on the psychosocial factors, isolation, motivation, loss of control. And again, as I'm typing, feel free to put in the chat box, because I think the chat box is a little bit easier for you to put information. Put some things in there and I'll keep checking as we go along. So here goes. There's one handout that was sent in the chat box. And if you can click on it and get to it, you can check your own space while I'm going on and talking. It looks like this, but perhaps what would be better for you is later on, maybe tomorrow, to take a look at that checklist and go through your home and see if any of these are issues and concerns. So we're going to start with the chair. The chair is really important. One of the things that we found when we pivoted to working at home and living at home and staying most of our time at home, we didn't necessarily have a chair or a desk that we might typically use in our workplace that was designed for sitting at a computer. So we've had to make some changes. So one of the key things with using a chair that everyone, I want you to do this now. If you're sitting on a couch, that too. I want you to sit all the way back and make sure that your back is in contact with the back of the chair or the couch, the sofa that you're sitting at. That's really important. The chair is really your foundation for the workstation. And you need to think about, if you have a chair that's adjustable, to adjust it on a regular basis. So I started out early this morning, lower on my chair. I had my chair back at about 110 degrees. I actually had in my home a real office chair, just happen to have that because I do a lot of work teaching remotely. And so I had a lot of the ergonomic products I needed in my home. So I started the day a relaxed position. And then later in the day, I adjusted my chair so I'm sitting upright. My back is completely supported. Now, you might not have something like that to do to support your back. Maybe it's not comfortable. Maybe it's a hard back chair, which you're seeing in one of these photos, where I've got a red cushion that I'm sitting on, right? And you'll also see that I have a pillow. Well, maybe you don't have a pillow that you can put in to put in your back, or maybe you don't have a pillow to sit on. Take a towel and roll it. Just roll it. And you can put this towel in the small of your back to help with the natural curve of your back. Oh my goodness, even though I have a very comfortable chair, this rolled towel feels really good. You could take a t-shirt, a smaller pillow, you could do that. So if you're sitting on a chair and you are at a table and you are low on the chair in comparison to the table, sit on a pillow. Okay, and I have a pillow. This was an outdoor lawn chair pillow that I put on my kitchen table chair, and that was really helpful. The other thing, take a look at that orange chair. That pillow is too big. I would remove that pillow. I'd put it back on someplace else, and I would sit on that chair, which is extremely comfortable. It's the stressless chair. And I might be working with my computer there, but, and I'll talk about it again in a little bit, I would never have my computer on my lap, okay? The laptop computer warms up and you can get burned. So I might take a box. This happens to be a puzzle box. I might take a Monopoly game box or any kind of box that you have that can sit on your lap, and put my laptop computer on top of that, okay? We want to make sure that if we're using that ottoman in that orange chair, that we get up, okay? We don't stay with that ottoman sitting like that the whole time. We might have our feet on the floor. Wherever we're sitting, we need to have our feet flat. Now, if our feet dangle, because like me, I'm vertically challenged, I'm only 5 feet tall, my feet are not going to touch the ground, rest your feet on something. Now, some of us have footrests, I didn't. So a box, we get a lot of these Amazon boxes. You could use that as a footrest, but my favorite footrest are my yoga blocks, okay? 2 of my yoga blocks. Put down on the floor and I rest my feet. And when we're talking about feet, really important, take those shoes off, okay? No need to wear heels. Put on flats or slippers when you're sitting at the computer. You want to be comfortable. Okay, let's see if we have any comments. Any comments so far on the chair? Okay, let's move on to the work surface, which is really important. I know that a few of you said that you're sharing workspace with a husband. You might want to see if there's any area that you could have as a dedicated space. If you look over here to the left, my son-in-law set up a workspace for himself. It was my office that I had to share with him when they tested negative for COVID and moved in for 2 weeks to work with us, to live with us, and totally dedicated space. Keep an eye on where that shade is, because I want to talk about light in a little bit. Here's another space. This is my computer workspace when I was living in another dorm at BU, and I used a kitchen table. The point of all of this is to have a dedicated workspace, have a hard surface, because remember I said don't have your computer on your lap. That's not the best thing to do. Make sure you have ample leg space. And this is really important because a lot of times we've been really creative on where we're setting up our computers, and there could be bars on the bottom of the table or desk that we're using. Or there could be, just a pile of junk. Maybe you've set up something where there's baskets, or maybe there's drawers or something. Try to find some space so that you've got plenty of leg space to be comfortable. So removing clutter under your workspace is really important. So some work surfaces are not the best for working at. So remember the workspace that my son-in-law was using? That's my workspace here. I'm in New Hampshire working. The workspace is the surface is kind of rough on the edge of this folding table. So I took this material, which might be familiar to you. It's material that a plumber might wrap around plumbing. And I slit it and I put it on the side of my table, which you're seeing right here, because a lot of times when we're sitting at a table, maybe even a formal desk that you might be doing work on, we have a tendency to lean on it. And we don't want to have our body having contact and pressure. So I love putting this device, very inexpensive material, on the edge of surfaces. Workspace. Some people creatively were able to get a treadmill, and they are slowly walking while using their computer. And some people really want to have that experience of sitting and standing while they're working, taking time for either. And so a kitchen counter could be a good place to stand for a little bit and then to go back to sitting. So at this point, we are all going to get up and stretch. So here we go. We've been sitting for about 30 minutes. I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to walk you through just a quick stretch. Now, again, we're not going to do formal exercises. We're just going to do a stretch. If you feel that you may be off balance, hold on to something, but I'm going to just give you a little stretch. Get out of your chair. I can't see you. I hope you're listening to me. Out of your chair. And let's do something that's really very simple. Let's just swing back and forth. Okay? Back and forth. Now keep your feet flat on the floor. And now let's add where we might lift one foot when we go one direction and the other foot when we go the other direction. Okay? Let's stretch over our heads. And again, if you feel off balance, hold on to a table. And the last thing I want you to do, which I did this morning because I was so anxious about everything that's happening in the world, just shake. And shaking really helps get a lot of that anxiety away. And it feels really good. Okay, so let's sit down again. Oh, that felt really good. I hope you felt good too, getting up. So the next thing I want to talk about is the monitor. And the monitor is really important. Oops, I got to sit back in my chair. Here we go. What you want to do is position it directly in front of you. Like you're seeing me make eye contact with you because my computer monitor is directly in front. You want to have it about an arm's length away. So make a fist and stretch your arm. And if it is too close or too far, have your knuckles hitting the screen. That's a good distance, okay? Arm outstretched, closed fist. You want the screen at or slightly below eye level. You want your neck straight, and you want the monitor perpendicular to the window. That will allow you to not have glare on the screen. So in this space, remember I mentioned that my son-in-law was using my workspace, and the only way you could set this up would be with the monitor straight in front of the window. So if you have no flexibility in moving your monitor around, pull the shade, okay? Pull the shade. Make sure that you have more light in your space, because we're in daylight savings, and if you're working later in the evening, it gets dark. So make sure you have maybe even a lamp on the table that can give you some extra light. I want to just show you some examples here, because some people might not be able to get their monitor up to a height where it's at eye height. Now, when we lift our monitor up, I don't want you working on the keyboard at an angle, okay? So we're going to raise our monitor, and then we'll talk about an external keyboard in a moment. So you can purchase notebook computer stands, tablet stands. They're relatively inexpensive. That's what I have right here. I've got it elevated. But if you don't have that, you can use a book. In the top right corner, one of my clients had hat boxes, and she used her old hat boxes to raise up her monitor. And we all know that we have lots of toilet paper from COVID, so that could be something to raise your computer monitor, but you can raise it on anything. So once it's raised, it is too high for you to be typing on it, right? So one of the things that you'll want to do is to get an external keyboard, okay? And you want an external keyboard that is a small size, similar to what you have on a notebook computer. You don't want to have your arms all the way out to the side trying to reach all of the keys and the extra keypad. You want to have it close to you, as close as possible. So when we're using a keyboard and we are typing, trying to come up with keyboard shortcuts is great. Again, for a notebook computer and a tablet too, these external input devices are important. So that would be your keyboard, and it would be your mouse, okay? You want to keep your arms as close to your body as possible, and your elbows near your side. You want to relax your shoulders. Again, your back is against the back of the chair. Keep your wrists straight by floating your hands while typing. I happen to be very lucky that in 7th grade, I learned how to touch type. And I bet many of you are touch typers, where you can type without looking down. So try to have your hands floating. Don't have your wrist supported by anything. Again, that contact stress is really detrimental. That's the wrist rest and mouse rest. I don't recommend them. Again, floating your hand is best. Do we have any questions or anything in the chat that I can answer? And I'll just keep going. So you all have a handout that has all of these different points on it. It's actually a picture of a mouse pad that I created that are all over Boston University. We've placed them there so that students and faculty and staff can set up their computer in a healthy way. And this is a perfect example if we had all the things that I've spoken about: an external keyboard, raising up your monitor, having a mouse. We could have a headset. Look where the person's back is against the chair and their feet are supported. So you'll have that as well as a handout. And perhaps what you could do is double check that your workstation has all those features. So our phones. Some of you mentioned that you're using your telephone and using it maybe even for this webinar. Be selective in answering emails and texts. Consider using voice recognition software. It's really gotten accurate. Use abbreviations, cut and paste when texting messages and typing. Don't spend a lot of time on your phone using it. Use it for no more than 10 minutes at a time. Avoid typing with your thumb. We're seeing a lot of people developing problems, particularly with their thumb, because of just using your thumb for typing. And stretch your hands. Stretch your body before you sit down to use your phone or stand using your phone, using your computer. Really important. Let me see. Do I have a question here? I thought I saw something. Oh, okay, great. Oh, I see some more. Kitchen laptop, 2 hours a day, no PJs, try to stay in a routine. That's great. I like that. And you're missing seeing friends and family, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So I want to now make a transition to cognitive load. We'll talk about time management quite a bit next. I just want to mention that being on videos like we are, many of us are on Zoom a lot of time during the day. You may not be working per se, but you may be on Zoom interacting with friends, maybe going to a webinar like this. It's very tiring, particularly on your eyes and processing that. So take a break. Don't spend the whole day on a video meeting or using Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. And the small screens. When you are on these videos, try to use a larger screen than the smaller one, which might be your phone. So I want to spend some time on time management because that's really important. And I've mentioned this already. Keeping to routines is so important. As an occupational therapist, one of the things that I do is help people stay on routines. And what I might do is have someone fill out for a week, letting me know all the things they're doing. And then I will help with getting back into a routine and being organized. And perhaps, you know, while being home, you've started to develop some discomfort. We can see what changes you need to make. So part of time management is keeping to routines, but knowing when you're having issues as well. Creating boundaries to maintain work-life balance, so important. And I'm going to give you an example for today. I start my day very early in the morning. I teach classes at Boston University remotely and meet with doctoral students around the globe because we have a global program. And stayed up till 3 in the morning looking at the election and got up at 6:30, had my first meeting at 7, then another meeting. And then I was just, you know, feeling like, oh my God, I got to get to work, get to work. And then I decided to separate my work life from my personal life and stopped and did an hour of yoga with Kripala. And boy, did I feel better. So I actually have built into my routine before I get onto the computer to do yoga and stretch and prepare for the day. So set realistic schedules for yourself and breaks. One of the things that I have done with my smartphone is I put in taking breaks, taking a break every 30 minutes. Prioritize and set clear deadlines, chunk tasks out so you can decrease feeling so overwhelmed. Setting limits, learning how to say no is really important. Delegating. If you are perhaps working with helping a family member in childcare, taking shifts for caregiving, and eliminating controllable distractions. So let's make a shift to this next section, which is the psychosocial factors. I know someone said that, and a couple said that they're missing friends and family, isolation, motivation, and loss of control. Let's go over isolation and what things we can do, what strategies we can do. Okay, here goes. So one of the things I've mentioned to you is getting moving and walking, stretching, talking. If you are going out and are wearing your mask, physically distancing, see if you can set up walking with someone and put that into your routine. I'd like to suggest that you stretch before you walk, maybe do some yoga, and that will allow you time with another person if you're feeling isolated. Now, if you're unable to spend time with another person, when you go for a walk, if you use voice recognition software, you can talk while you're walking, okay? And that's really important. Spend time in nature. Now, it's getting cold out, and it might be hard to take a walk at a park if that's something that you like doing. So bring nature into you. And one of the things that you would see if I turn my computer around is that I've got a dozen roses on the table, bright yellow roses. I have 6 orchids in the window and an African violet. So I have brought nature in, and we know that being in nature is very healing and reduces some of the stress that we're feeling. Engage in favorite occupations. Now, Rachel wrote, I listen to Audible books, so do I. So we'll have to exchange ideas of books. So when I go walking, I have something in one ear because I want to always make sure I know my environment and what's happening, and I listen to books. But engage in favorite occupations. I love cooking, and in fact, I teach healthy vegetarian cooking every Wednesday evening to students at Boston University, and that allows me to engage with other people. Think about art. Think about things you've always wanted to do. Maybe you've wanted to learn Spanish or Hebrew. Think about what you can do that's fun, and then maybe contact someone to do it with them virtually. Catch up with family and friends. One thing that we do in our family is every Sunday night, routine, we have a family Zoom meeting, okay? Every Saturday, I have a meeting with friends. Have that routine built in. And you could act it. If you're a tennis player or play golf, you could even just practice some of those swings in your own home. Let's look at motivation, because that's been really a hard thing with children. They've been having a hard time being motivated to go to school. Maybe you're not feeling as motivated too. So rotate the things that you're doing in the day. So maybe do some baking in the morning. And there's a great book called Rage Baking that I turn your attention to. It's a great book, great recipes, and really great narratives in it. Staying organized helps stay motivated. Reward yourself. Reward yourself with something that is very positive. So for me, one of my rewards has been ordering lipsticks and trying different colors rather than rewarding myself with ice cream. And participating in, again, occupations that are fun, that are 3D rather than on a computer, arts and crafts and building and board games. I have friends that are playing backgammon with each other virtually. So it's a board game that's set up that they each have their board game. They're looking at each other's board, and they're moving their pieces, and they're engaging with each other. Okay, loss of control. How many of you feel you've lost control completely? You know, you're limited by, you know, the time you can go outside, seeing family and friends. Put that down if you're feeling like you've got a loss of control. So one of the things that I recommend is coming up with a self-schedule. Come up with what you feel you can do, okay? And if you have feeling isolated, see how you can pull someone else as well. I know that someone said that they have a loss of control in some ways because they're relegated to the bedroom while their husband is in the dining room as well. So figure out ways that you can optimize privacy so you have a little bit more control. Think about what you can change. What can you change? Can't change everything. You can change your attitude, okay? And that helps as well. Follow a regular routine that helps with motivation. Make time to move. I can't stress that enough, and I know the doctors will stress that as well, that staying active is so important. And practice mindfulness, and I know that you've had some webinars on that topic as well. So I want us to take a peek and see if we learn some things. That middle picture is actually Piaget, a famous psychologist. He's no longer with us, his office. But I loved looking at that because sometimes people are feeling so overwhelmed with their space. So someone look at these and do you see any issues based on what I was talking about? Should we have our notebook computer right in front of a window? No. If we can't change that, pull a shade, okay? And the other one, what do we see as an issue on the other photos that's here? Again, the person wouldn't be sitting straight in front of their computer because it's not in front of them, and they would be sort of twisted to the side to be able to use it. So that checklist that you have from me will allow you to go through your own home and make some changes. So I want to reinforce as I get closer to the end of my presentation that taking a break every 20 minutes to me is optimal. Most people will take a break every 30 minutes. I'd like you to think about doing that. And if you find that it's hard for you to do that when you're on the computer and you're so involved in everything that you're doing, I have a software program on my blog that you can put on. It's called Stretch Break for Kids. We're all kids. And you can put that on and it'll pop up and say, take a break, and put you through some exercises. I want to have time for Q&A. So I'm just going to show you some of these stretches and we'll do a couple of them. So all of these stretches are ones that you want to hold. Be sure that you're breathing when you're doing it. And if you can, get up from your where you are right now. So shall we try to do a neck stretch? I think this would be fun. So you can do it sitting down if you want to. I want you to glide your head as far back as you can and hold it, and then glide it forward and hold it. Let's tilt our ear towards our shoulder. Come forward. And then our ear to the other side of our shoulder. And we can turn our body if we're sitting in our chair now and grab our armrest if we have an armrest. And you can turn to the right and turn to the left. Okay, I want to make sure we have time for questions. And here are a few more. And you'll all be able to have a copy of this slideshow. So finally, if you're interested, I have a blog with lots of information. Feel free to go on that. And I want to thank you. I hope you incorporate these ergonomic strategies so you can live life to its fullest.
Thank you, Karen. That was wonderful. I'm sure there would be many applause now in this virtual world where we're all isolated. So, but I think this was just really fantastic information. And there's so many great things for us to kind of further dissect. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Do we have some questions?
Well, I couldn't help but thinking as you were talking about how when we deal with stress, I think all of us naturally try to use our personal resilience. And there's this idea that we should just power through.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that really is self-destructive. And I think you really gave some great examples about that. So I don't know if you want to make another couple comments on that, because I think that's just a lesson that we all need to hear again and again and again.
It's really important because right now we have a total lack of control over what's happening with the election. And I think if we are just powering through, like you're saying, that's going to be challenging for us. So finding time to acknowledge that we are stressed and to do things that help decrease the stress. I have to tell you, when I did yoga today, that shaking my body helped me so much. It just calmed me down. So dealing with that and making sure you incorporate things that take care of yourself. I think a lot of times we are so much of us are caregivers in the roles that we are as a grandmother, as a daughter, as, a sister, brother, whatever it might be. We forget about caring for ourselves. And that's incredibly important. So build that in every day.
What wonderful advice. I think there is a question here about a specific owl chair.
Let me see where it is.
The owl chair or stool. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, I have to tell you, I wish somebody could show me it. It's called an owl, O-W-L.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know that, but I will Google that and check into that to see what it is.
Can you comment in general about a backless chair?
I don't like backless chairs. I don't recommend them at all. There was a time period where people were sitting on the blow-up balls, like we use in Pilates, the bigger, larger balls. I think it's good for balance, but I don't recommend it for doing your computer work. You really need to have a background. Oh, owl. Yeah, that's interesting. I have to say, here's where we're going to look at ergonomics. When you Google it and go on, see what they say about ergonomics. It's very modern looking. It looks very attractive, but I have to tell you, I don't think, yep, here we go. And it's so interesting. They've got ergonomics here, but you've got to try it and see if it works for you. And I'm going to guess it's quite expensive.
Probably.
The other thing I want to just mention, and I know that, we talk about lifestyle at Lown. It's really important when you are working to set up your workstation so that you stay hydrated. I have a whole pot of green tea that I drink throughout the day. And then the other thing I always keep on my table are some fruits, and blueberries are great, easy to pop into your mouth. So, combine everything together. Those are all ways of staying healthy. And it's a good application of ergonomics because it's really taking care of you in so many different aspects.
Such nice advice. The other thing that you touched on, but we didn't really dive into, is you mentioned your lipstick trial.
Yes.
And, this is something that my patients have heard me talk about because, I really believe we all self-medicate in so many different ways. And that was a lot of times it's not even purposeful. We don't even realize it, right? But the more we make that connection, the more we're really in control of our actions. So what a great example of, using something, neat, right, to medicate. So
it's healthy. And let me see, is it on the table here? Here it is. I always keep the lipstick with me, trying a different color. That's been how I really thoroughly enjoyed because I loved getting dressed to go to work, and I'm, wearing appropriate clothing, but I'm not in a dress and how I usually go. But I can control putting on my earrings and putting on lipstick, and that has been really wonderful during this time period. And I look at that as part of ergonomics and making sure that we're doing self-care.
Love that. That's really fun.
Karen, what about standing desks? Different than a backless desk. What do you think?
Yeah, so I actually have a sit-stand desk, so I can hydraulically move it up and down. The evidence literature is still out about it. I think it's great if you're able to stand, but what's important if you have a standing desk to make sure that you have some kind of mat that you're standing on, and get rid of those high heels. Make sure you have good footwear. I have to say I wear slippers that have a good support when I'm using the standing desk. I typically rotate when I'm in my office at Boston University, so I'll stand for about a half hour because that's my stretch break time. I'll get out, and when I do a break, it's getting out, even if I'm standing, it's going to get a glass of water, walking around the hall for a few minutes, really taking a break. Then I'll come back and I'll make it sit. So again, you've got to see what's important. So one of the taglines that I've been using for people using computers is work comfortably, change and vary your postures often. Really important. And I think of all the evidence that's out there, getting up and taking breaks is really important.
For mental and physical reasons, I think
for sure.
the advice. Yeah. Yeah.
And what about, you've talked about, what we talk about, these 4 pillars of wellness, the nutrition, stress management, exercise, and you've covered all those today. I'd like to hear your opinion on sleep and whether or not there's something ergonomically you can do to help your sleep be deeper and more restful.
I love, Dara, I'm so glad you said that. That's actually something I've been working on, because since COVID, it's been really hard for me to get, a certain amount of sleep. So as an occupational therapist, I've been practicing this with myself, to have a sleep hygiene routine. So going to sleep at the same time, maybe I'll just give you an example, 11 p.m. Okay, do all of my prep, brush my teeth, all of that, and not have my cell phone next to me at the bed. No TV on, no computer on, because you don't want that distraction. I like having a cooler space for sleeping. I find that that's really helpful. Someone said that they listen to Audible. I find for me, and this has worked really well, is to set my timer on my Audible book to about 8 minutes. I'm usually asleep by that time. Okay. Wow. So that's been working. I don't need a lot of sleep. That's been something forever, but I have been able to improve the amount of time I'm sleeping, and sleep is so important. But there's distractions that we have. How many people go to sleep with their TV on, or as soon as they get out of bed, oh, I got to check, go on Facebook, or check, what's happening with the election. You want to avoid having that blue light in your bedroom space.
And I have found that some gentle stretching right before bed, super helpful too. So for people who get sore necks and shoulders during sleep, it definitely helps prepare the body for bed, just like you're preparing your mind for bed.
Well, one of the things that I would do if I was living back in Boston right now is I would take a bath before I went to bed, and it would be with scents like vanilla, because vanilla is very calming, and that would be part of my routine. I don't have that here. I do miss it, so I try to figure out other things. But your olfactory system is really important. So if you maybe have some lavender or vanilla near your bedside, before you go to bed. That's really helpful and calming.
Great.
And that just touches on importance of physical, mental, and emotional therapy. And I think you did a great job of really making us think about all these strategies and really healthy living. So we've reached that 4 o'clock hour. So unfortunately, I think we're going to conclude for this week. But Karen, what a treat. This was so much fun. So thank you for all your insight and words of wisdom.
Thank you so much, and thank you all. Stay healthy and live life to its fullest.
So we'll see everyone back in a few weeks. The website has been updated for the next lectures over the next 6 weeks or so, and we look forward to seeing everyone back. All right, bye everybody.